Mike Harris back with What in the Law podcast. Today I am going to do something a little bit different. Instead of talking about things that happen all the time in court that might affect you or someone you know, I'm going to talk about something that will at least directly probably not affect very many of you, but you all may be interested in. Namely, I am going to talk a little bit about the indictment against Donald Trump that was just issued yesterday. I looked over this indictment and I want to do a little bit to try to summarize what is going on. Now, keep in mind, this very much is a oversimplification. There is a lot of information in there and it can be pretty darn complicated. And one of the things that can make it complicated is there is some missing information, namely because this is talking about classified information that they don't want to fully describe. Nonetheless, I did look at the counts, and I'm going to try to break this down. Before I do that, I want to explain a concept that happens pretty often in criminal cases, which is when a certain conduct could violate more than one law. When that happens, it's pretty common for the same action to be charged multiple ways. And one example would be, let's say you punch someone in the face. If you do that in Colorado, you are probably going to be facing two separate charges. One would be called assault. Second one would be called harassment. Even though it's the exact same offense and exact same action, because the laws are written a little bit differently and that action could violate one or both laws. And that is a lot of what I see going on in the indictment against Mr. Trump, although it's a little bit more complicated than the example I just gave. So let me break it down a little bit. First, counts 1 through 31 are all pretty much the same law. They are basically charging that Mr. Trump illegally possessed classified information that he was not authorized to do. The reason there are 31 counts is each count is describing a different document. And these documents are not 100% described because of the nature of them, but they primarily describe information relating to a foreign country or countries which are not specifically named. The only country which is named is the United States. And these documents had allegedly information regarding military and nuclear capabilities of other nations and the United States. The next counts, number 32. Keep in mind that counts 32 through 37, as I'm about to go through, appear to be more or less the same conduct, but charged in different ways and sometimes with certain specific details as far as the actions. But count 32 is titled Conspiracy to Withhold Information. Namely, that there were these classified documents that Mr. Trump and Mr. Nauta and possibly other individuals had discussed hiding and not turning over when requested by the government. Count 33 is withholding these documents, and it specifically describes Mr. Trump directing a attorney who is not specifically named to hide these classified documents. Count 34 is described as corruptly concealing documents, and that describes Mr. Trump hiding these documents from his attorney, who was then going to report what he found to the federal government. Count 35 is another count of corruptly concealing documents, and that has to do with allegedly Mr. Trump telling an attorney to make a false certificate that there had been a search for all the classified documents and that they had been properly turned over. Count 36 is a scheme to conceal these documents and basically describes hiding the documents and moving these boxes of documents where they would not be found by the government. And then finally, regarding Mr. Trump, is a charge of false statements where he is alleged to have directed an attorney to provide this false certificate to the government. The final count is count 38, which is specifically towards Mr. Nauta regarding some false statement allegations. Now, the maximum penalties on these counts range from 5 years to 20 years. Please keep in mind that these are all allegations. Whether any of this information turns out to be proven or not remains to be seen, and what sentence, if any, Mr. Trump ends up receiving remains to be seen. But in short, while this appears to be a very complicated document, a way to perhaps oversimplify and break this down is there's basically two categories of charges. First, the illegal possession of classified documents, and secondly, the cover-up of not providing these documents, which involve various allegations of moving documents, hiding them, and providing false information. So I hope that helps you to understand a little bit about what's going on. There'll be many other shows and programs out there providing more information in far more detail. And I will see you next time on What in the Law podcast.